Hey everybody, I just wanted to jump on. I have to go make this really brief, but I have to jump on this for my own mental health. And I just don't even know where to start because I'm so far behind homework. I'm catching up on my homework. I'm taking care of myself, and things are falling into place for me. But at the same time, I have to be mindful of other people. Like, yes, my privacy has been breached, but that doesn't mean other people's privacy has to be breached in the process. Yes, I've already had my life at risk multiple times in this process. It's been super difficult. And I also want to share, like, I don't expect anyone to relate or even accept what I say as truth because the reality is I have experienced things that are one like very unique experiences, and but also I made the sacrifice so that I could experience and learn those things. So it's not an imagination, or it's not simply me asking you to put yourself in my shoes, as it is a lived experience. I lived this is my life. And for instance, like, I was reading the Texas workers comp paperwork, and it says you can't demand and certain like irrelevant, unnecessary things. And the reality of the matter is that everybody in this country, especially laborers and workers that work hard round the clock and pay their taxes, like members of my family, members of your family, people in general, when they get injured at any rate, it's not a demand. It's the bare minimum of what everyone should demand the bare minimum of what they are entitled to within fairness and reason. And I don't care what people say about me. I feel that if the company that I work for operated in the world worth billions of dollars and the contract for workers' compensation, that company at the time of my injury, I think I'm being way beyond fair. When at the time of my injury, the workers' insurance compensation company was worth 75 billion. So I think modern day, that's way more than enough money. 2022, and we're almost in 2027. I think I gave a lot of grace in that circumstance, and I think I am still being very gracious, and I am very particular, and I have broken free from not so much perfection, because that is my belief. I believe that God created me perfectly in his image. I believe that God created all of us perfect, that we are flawless. We're human, we feel, we have sensations, and it's my belief that God created me in that way so that I know he is my creator, and I come to him and I surrender to him all my problems. But at the same time, that true logic is knowing that God has surrendered me into this world out of love. He designed me in this world and surrendered me so that I can live in this world to fulfill my purpose, the purpose that He designed for me, the plan that He designed for me. And I'm not going to be, or maybe I'm not, I don't know, I'm not here. Maybe the perception is like Evan's a people pleaser, he's insecure, he's cowardice. Okay, so then did you really look at all those pictures of me? Because I sit here and I am super stuck on looking at images of a man that I barely even know, that I wish I knew, that I wish I could fit his shoes again, instead of barely making it to the restroom or barely holding myself up. And what I have laid out for the company and what I've laid out for the world to see on paper, that is realistic in my world. That is reality in my world. And I'm sorry if it's so far fetched and so unbelievable to you. I may not believe the things you've experienced in your life. But I also know that this is my adversity, and I've worked very hard on finally facing it. And I don't feel like I have ever, and maybe that's the problem. I've always known the truth is that I don't have to overexert myself when I'm living the truth in my reality. But I also was in an ecosystem that accepted that portion of me, as opposed to being out here where I had the false security and feelings and sensations that people would accept me. When I worked for a company that didn't view me in that way and gave me every opportunity to excel and in every aspect of my career and grow, and didn't judge me based on anything else. Eventually, did I end up surrounded by stupid people? Yes. And in the middle, in my crossroads along this path, was I conflicted inside? Very much so. Why would I continue to participate and cooperate with people outside of the company that have only caused me more harm, have only doubted me, have only gaslit me, and treated me in a worse, probably worse? Like, I had people in the workplace that probably could have taken me out because they were so angry and envious. But on the outside, here I am going to OSHA, here I am going to the Department of Labor, to National Highway Traffic, to NHTSA. Here I am going to NLRB. Here I am going to OIEC, TDW, DWC, going to everybody, for help, even the VA and the OPCs. And people were like treating me like crud. They thought I was nuts. They were like, how do you work for Tesla? Or how can you get in an accident in a Tesla? I mean, for a very long time, having that response and that reaction, and simultaneously losing everything that I had, more than anything, losing my passion, losing what made me happy, driving, and what I loved the most was working on cars, having all that just lost with one horrible day that I wish more than anything never happened. And that is like, I think that facing my adversity is like, it's not even the beginning of the worst of my problems. And that's sad. Even when I try to explain myself to other people, they were like, that's horrible. And I think that as of lately, like, I was in I think it was Lululemon, and the light fixture fell down. And as I was explaining it, the lady on the other end of the phone was like, that's extremely horrible. But I have seen worse happen. And I think that I have heard and seen so much worse in the short amount of time that I worked for that company, that I was just so numb to it. Like, and even some people have said, well, the sexual things that I've experienced or whatever, the sexual harassment, like discussing it. And I said, that was like the least of my my concerns, because it was just so normal to me at that center. It was just something that I shouldn't have tolerated as long as I did. And I did everything that I could to get myself help and report it. So not only was it that, but I think that I really had to not forgive. I think I had to like let go of the fact that I was working. I cannot remember one time, and I want the receipts. Hey, I'm not Dayford Vid or whatever his name is. This wasn't a vehicle where the, you know, that girl was in the back of the trunk. I was inside of the Tesla service center, inside of the fact. I want all the footages and the receipts. I There was not one time that I never had my hands on a Tesla vehicle. I was left out in the parking lot in the heat all my shift without any water. I was drinking like I was drinking coffee in the morning or whatever coffee I had left because I got there early. So I would get there early and nobody was using the coffee machine, so I'd go get the coffee. And I think I had like remnants of that coffee. And I was out there in Texas heat and the entire months. So I got there in September maybe, in end of August, beginning of September maybe, to the Austin, Texas Service Center. And my workplace accident was November 1st of 2022. So September, October, November, September, October, November. So maybe like in the first month that I worked there, yes, I think it was the first month that I worked there because it was around the time of the Renaissance. So in that first month that I worked there, I never saw anyone do what I did. I mean, they were jacking around. They just kept like swiping on their phones. So we would have a tablet like this. Now that I think about it, my memories just natural things. So we had a tablet like this, and when we didn't have a tablet like this, everybody would use their personal phones, which is unreal. Like, I mean, I had my company phone, but they didn't. So obviously, I was squared away because I was an internal corporate hire. So I had my company phone and I had my personal phone, and all they would do is just swipe, 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 swipe on every single card. Check, check, check. They weren't even expecting them. The crowd that I was around were they were dumb. They were idiots, and I will do everything to make sure that in some way, shape, or form that the judge or somebody knows that I'm gonna put it all out on paper as soon as I can. Those people, the company is supposed to put stay away orders, so that's what needs to happen. Everybody that did what they did to me, they need to stay out of my life and for the rest of my life because this has destroyed my life in so many ways that no one should ever have to go through it again. So in that first month, they were lollygagging, jacking around. The cars would just sit there day after day after day after day. They were hardly moving. They would crash in them. They would have accidents in them. They would ding them up and they wouldn't make the appropriate repairs. I saw one guy jam up a curb and tore out the whole rim, and he had no automotive experience whatsoever. This was Ronan or was whatever his name was, and he just started like scuffing it up. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter what type of repair you or whatever it is you're doing. I didn't say it, but I couldn't believe that they just let some kid off the street start trying to buff out one of the most difficult, that car needed to be in the body shop. And that crowd, that team, they were causing all the damage. So then a month goes by and they put me out there by myself. I processed They got so angry. Kenny got so angry because I processed over 40 cars in one morning. So what the F were you doing every single day for the past 5 years that you've been working here? I don't know. And Jason was like, I don't know why. Can someone give me an answer? Can someone answer me why none of these vehicles are leaving off the lot? Evan figured it out because everybody's jacking around doing having relationships with each other in the workplace and worse. But see, all that stuff, that was kiddish, that was childish stuff to me. That was not the worst of my problems. To them, yes. Why I had to let go, I'll tell you right now what I'm saying in so many words. Why I had to let go? Because I had to really understand and comprehend this took a lot of work. Like write post-its and crap. I do weird stuff to remember things, and I'm really hard on myself. But I had to look back on those moments, one, and have grace and compassion for myself, and know that at least I showed up for myself when nobody else would. And more importantly, God took me out of that environment. But I had to really understand and comprehend that these horrible people spent all day behind computers, jacking around, not doing their jobs, messing around with each other. Who knows what they were doing in the lobby, not helping people. And customers would come in, they would come get their car and take a picture under the tent, and they wouldn't even make it 5 miles down the road. They would have an accident in them and come back. And they would say, "Sorry, nothing I can do." One guy came in, he was a Spanish speaker. They treated him like crap, and I went and helped him. And after I helped him that one time, after that one time, then everybody started saying, "I need a Spanish speaker. I need a Spanish speaker." Like, don't you know money speaks every language? And first of all, like, I am almost positive that a lot of these job descriptions for Tesla require you to have some form of education. I mean, I don't know, but these were dumb people that I was around in Austin. And so this customer came in because he said he was having issues at the DMV registering his car. Maybe because later down the road I found that Texas, that Tesla doesn't have a vehicle dealership license in the state of Texas. But anyways, that's a whole other can of worms. So I had to really understand for myself, like, self, Evan, these people had nothing better to do but sit around, jack around behind a computer all day and write all kinds of stuff about you and talk all kinds of stuff about you. Meanwhile, I was doing what I loved, always keeping two hands on a car no matter what, because I loved that. And that was my passion, that was my career. That was what I was there for. I was not there for people to touch on me, ask me what my age is, ask me what race I am, where I come from, what I talk, or them to harass me or say what's wrong with that guy, he barely talks. I wasn't there for all that crap. In New York, at least those people were real talk 100%. And at least they kept it real with me and said who they really were and what they really did and that they apologized. But they gave me something, like, at least I grew out there. At least I learned other things. And I think even though a lot was wrong, like obviously recruiting people from one dealership to Tesla, like that's super wrong over and over and over again. And getting those cash bonuses over and over and over again, like that's one complaint that I have about working in New York. Like I have there was nepotism, there was people recruiting just for the bonus. So that is entirely wrong. But at least that guy he called me up and he said, "Evan, first of all, I want to say that I am sorry that this happened to you." He said, "There is nobody out here at your skill level for you to work with." And ultimately, I ended up doing all the jobs by myself for the most part. And, you know, when crap went wrong, I almost guarantee that that rarely happened. But when it did, it was always that one guy's fault. I forgot his name. Whatever. He has a beard. Whatever. It was always, he and I. It's because I didn't want to deal with him. One time, I did a job and I showed up to the house. No, I can't remember his name. He was bald and had a beard. I don't know. They're all John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt to me. Paul Peter. I don't know. I'll think of his name eventually. But one time I went to a job and the clients, I always had, so everybody in New York, they didn't have their security badge. They didn't have their IDs. Nobody in Henrietta Rochester Service Center. No one had an ID badge. Nobody had an ID. Oh my gosh, this is unreal. So I went to one house. I believe I went to that house. No, I think so. I think I went to that house or around that house. But anyways, I went to the house. No, I didn't go to that house. So I went to a house, and the owner of the Tesla comes out to me, and I said, "Hi, I'm Evan." He was like, "That's crazy because we just had an Evan come from Henrietta Service Center." I said, "That can't be true because, you know, I'm Evan." and there's only one Evan there. And he's like, well, the guy showed up and said, my name is Evan. And I showed him my Tesla badge. And I said, did he have a badge? And he said, no. I said, hey, never hold back or never be ashamed or afraid to not ask any of us for our name badge or our security badge. And he said, I'll know better next time. And I was like, yeah, yeah. I said, you can always ask us if to show identification when we show up to your house. You can, you know, let us know, show you identification, and I'd be more than happy to show you that, which I did. That I'm Evan. And I was just thinking to myself, like, whatever, it's baloney, it's bullcrap, right? But I cannot make this stuff up. I really can't make any of this stuff up. I would see a female with her pants halfway down working on cars. That same female was having, like, there was some sexual harassment stuff going on with the guy that I'm telling you about with the beard and the bald head. And, I mean, people were smoking pot at that service center. People were dealing pot at that service center. You know, at the end of the day, was it perfect in New York? No. But I at least have respect for the manager there, the incoming manager there, that people came in and had my back. When I put in a report, EHS came in and had my back. When when the report was to the point where other things needed when EHS showed up and EHS was like did their assessment, I had more reinforcement and it was like it wasn't even reinforcement as it was that I had people that came in, saw what I saw, and they did the right thing. Was it perfect? No. But ultimately, what happened was another service technician came to that service center and retrained or started to train the people that didn't have the credentials to work on cars. And so, at least I have some form of like, obviously, it's not okay what happened to me. I'm not going to sugarcoat it anymore. It's wrong. But what I can say is like, this is truth. Like, truth is, I at least got an apology. I at least was told there's nobody out there to for me to work with. I would be the only one taking on the jobs at my skill level alone, and that's horrible. It is horrible because I mean, Henrietta Rochester, you're servicing all of upstate New York, and sometimes you would go down to Pennsylvania. I was so close to Pennsylvania, it was unreal, and that's a large area to cover. So, and then some of the jobs, I mean, a lot of people have this perception that upstate New York is maybe like I don't know more suburban than inner city inner boroughs or whatever, but it's a lot of farmland, and sometimes we would have to drive like all the way up through this farmland just to get to a house, and I commuted 2 hours to work, 2 hours back every day. So, and mind you, I drove the fastest manufactured and the fastest car at that time daily. So not only was it the fastest manufactured car, but it was the fastest car in the lineup at that time. I would drive the Model S, the Palladium. Like I drove these cars all of the time. I never had an accident. I mean, I drove the Cybertruck, not the Cybertruck. I'm sorry. I drove the Model X. I drove just about every single lineup in that series at the time of my accident that was out, with the exception of the Roadster. But I still had some experience with the Roadster in the shop when people that had the old school Roadsters were coming for, and that was very rare. It wasn't I think it was one time, and so when I show up in Austin is when everything falls apart, and I told myself that was probably the worst move in my career that I ever made. I didn't. I don't know. I was dealing with a pair of numbnuts, and it nearly wiped me out, like entirely. So, yep, that's. I mean, it's not the whole story, but I'm I'm really getting there, and I think like I mean, I feel like to the level of comprehending, I was thinking earlier, I think that I really have wanted to go back to the days where I never put my emotions with words. I really do. I really miss those days when I could just talk about sensors, oxygen, tires, rims. Oh, check out that scuff. Oh, we're gonna remove and replace a windshield. Like, look at that urethane. Like, I don't know. Like, I really miss those days when I can just wipe out. Granted, there. I mean, I'm just so numb to the baloney. Really, would I ever go back there? No, never again. And if I ever step foot, I would probably never do it. But if I ever did, I mean, I already did, and it made matters worse. But you know, if I ever had any type of whatever to do, is just to make sure that nobody goes through exactly what I went through, that people know that they are not alone in the workplace, that they can say something and that something will be done about it. Even if it's the tiniest cut with a razor blade, or if somebody drills through a battery pack or zaps themselves, that they will have help. That as a team, as a company, nobody's going to let anybody fall behind. And really step in and follow through with workplace injuries. It's not a demand. This is not a demand. This is bare minimum what any worker in the country deserves when they get injured in the workplace. So, like, now in my life, I just feel like that level of not just corruption or operations or like my skill set. Like, I sacrificed so much. If people only knew that I transformed my entire life, I if people only knew everything that I have gone through in my young life through adulthood, that when I ended up at Samtech, I remember the first day, like, I remember me being the only one in class that Judd handed the book list, and I was the only one that did everything library and stuff like that to get those books and read them. And I remember Judd saying, "You actually read the list?" And yes, I actually had the books, and I read threads, bolts, and nuts, and I read every single thing. And not only that, but later down the road, I didn't get a good talking to. Like, this was not an easy conversation with Miss Linda at all. But I remember my first day, Miss Linda said, "Evan, we are going to set you up for success." And this was way in the beginning. This was before being recruited to Tesla. And when that opportunity came, this was not easy for me. I remember telling Miss Linda, I have never had anybody in my family ever do anything in their lives like this. And she said, if you want it that bad, Evan, you're going to have to work. She said, I want you to study every day after school. And I said, okay. And I would show up with the wonkiest people. You can't even believe what the wonkiest guy was my instructor. I'm talking about probably one of the worst guys in Sam Tech was my instructor. But I didn't care. I remember my first day after school studying, like, this guy is drunk. And he's my tutor to study. And then by the end of that, when it was coming close to my test, I walked into Miss Linda's office and she asked me, and I answered right off the bat. And if you know Miss Linda, you know that wasn't easy.